on page 38, this is called the one mean z-test. One mean z-test. Okay. Hey, what was the z-score? What was that originally? What is the z-score related to? Let's put it that way. Yeah, it's a standard deviation that has the decimals in it. So like a standard deviation is 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever standard deviation would be. The z-score is like the measure, of any of those increments and anywhere in between. Okay, so we've learned various parts of the hypothesis test. But the one that was going to tie it together, we'll summarize parts of the hypothesis test. There are so many hypothesis tests available. We've only learned one. Sorry, I've only given you one. And if you don't mind, just make sure everyone has page 38 open, please. All right. So the breakdown of the hypothesis test. So far, we've done state, the null, and the alternative hypothesis. Okay. Then we create this from the sampling distribution. And then we make our 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, make our normal distribution based on that. And that's kind of the picture of, hey, where do you think our data is going to fall with what we have kind of concluded? Calculate the p-value. And the p-value is something we do with decimals, right? That becomes basically p-value is, if you said, hey, we have something over here, and we could shade, to the right for a greater than, or shade to the left for a less than. So it's whatever this exact fulcrum right here would be, becomes the p-value. Okay? And then we state the conclusion. So we conclude where we fail to reject the null, or we reject the null. And remember, you are testing the alternative to give us evidence for or against the null hypothesis. Okay? And then check for assumptions. Okay, and I know this is all typed out for you, so there's really not many notes to do. And this is where we might think there might be a type 1 or type 2 error. This might be where we might say there's red flags. And a lot of times the red flags come from just the reading of how did they collect the data. So yesterday we talked kind of one of the red flags on that example was, remember the pain relief, and it had to do with hearing loss. And they sampled people who took pain medication and then tested their hearing loss, where basically you should test, in that case, you should have done a random test of the entire population and then detect hearing loss. And then once you do that hearing loss, then you kind of ask those people that are showing significant hearing loss, you ask them about, are they on pain medication or not? So you kind of have if you broaden it too much, there's too many things that could go wrong. If you isolate it, and then you kind of start building upon that. So think of it this way. You have your null hypothesis is this, but if you made your null hypothesis a huge region where you're trying to pigeonhole something, it becomes a much broader area where things could take place. Like these could be different samples in a huge space, whereas if you had different samples in a small space, it becomes a better idea, rather than if you keep going broader and broader and broader of too many different variables that could take place. And I will tell you, education, as a teacher, I am the worst person to go to, oh, we have the new greatest idea conference for teaching. Okay. There's all kinds of things. There's one that came out many years ago called Common Core Math. I'm sure that you have heard about that. You're probably subjected to it. And they used to run ads on TV that were completely fictional ads. Okay. But they got the public to buy into what they were saying to basically sell textbooks. That was the whole foundation behind it. You might have heard or might have read or might have just by word of mouth heard, oh, the United States mathematically with all our students, falls at number 26 in compared to other industrialized nations. And people are like, we can't be 26. We're the United States. Well, here's the really poor foundation of this argument. If you dig in deeper to find out what they're actually talking about. So the United States, us, we educate everybody. Okay? Now, there are certain people with certain disabilities that don't necessarily go through a normal formalized type of education. If you had somebody who had an IQ below a certain level because they have birth defects or brain deficiencies or whatever, not because there's anything, we're not pointing fingers at them. It's though we don't necessarily educate those people, but right now, like Cherry Creek High School, anyone who's enrolled to go here really can take any class you want. Now, we've created here, we have the CP path, we have the accelerated path, and we have the honors path. Okay, so we kind of track through kids at different levels for these paths. And the CP path doesn't mean that you're any less of a student or a person than if you're on the accelerated or the honors path. It's just, it's better fit for kids. Now, there is a big push at the state level and the district level that they want to eliminate those paths. Okay? They want basically everyone to be on the same exact path, and they would call basically all the maths. I forgot the name of it, but they basically want to say there's math 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and those are the only math classes everyone would take. So you would have the kid in this class who was the CP kid, the accelerated kid, and the honors kid in the same exact class. Okay? So what's going to happen in this type of situation, the student that is a CP kid is going to lose out. The student who is the honors kid is also going to lose out. And the kid who was the accelerated is going to probably thrive in this situation. Okay, now, I would say our CP and accelerated paths of courses are about the same percent. So let's say, and this is a fictional number, but let's just say we have 40% of our students that are on the CP path. We have 40% that are on the accelerated path. That leaves 20% of our kids that are on the honors path. I'm not saying that that's true. I'm just, just to give us a visual. So this is kind of a push that's taken place. So if my percentages were right, where we were saying, hey, 40% of our kids are on this path, 40% of our kids are on this path, and 20% of our kids are on this path, well, now that would mean 60% of our kids would lose out on an education, a really valid, tiered to their abilities education. But they want to push this. And there are schools that are signing on to this like, hey, this is a great idea. There's actually schools in this district that even if you fail a math class, you don't repeat a class, you take the next class. Well, basically, if you track those kids that failed one class and they take the next level class, they also fail that one. They also fail the following one. They fail the following one after that. So then you have a kid with straight Fs in math, and they didn't have the ability to recover what they should have learned, and they also, are losing out on, could be, in our scenario here, which is a false scenario, but a large portion of your population. Now, when let's take us back to this. When they said that the United States ranked 26th amongst other industrialized nations as far as mathematics went and as far as education went, that is such a incorrect thing to say, because we, for the most part, educate all of our students. Okay? There's other countries where when you are in kindergarten and when you're in 4th grade and when you're in 7th or 8th grade and when you are 10th or 11th grade or whatever their equivalent is, basically what they do is they're like, okay, these kids in kindergarten, you have the kids that can and the kids that can't. And then they get to 4th grade and they're going to do the same thing. They're going to say, hey, we have the kids that can, then we have the kids that can't. And then let's say because of some instructional, you might have a couple of the kids that fall into the higher category, and then you get to the 7th and 8th grade, same thing. So once you get to this location, those who can in 10th and 11th grade, these are the kids that are the college ready. And in a lot of other countries, this is far less percentage of the entire population than the whole. But they were comparing this commercial that was running on TV was saying, hey, we're taking this small percent, saying, look, these guys are all college ready that are on that path, and we're going to compare to all of the United States, and it's going to rank the United States at 26th as far as other industrialized nations. It's misleading, it's hurtful to education, but it was all generated so a textbook company could say, look, if you buy our textbook, this follows this process. And it didn't make us go above 26th compared to other nations in this type of thing. But when you take a branch of, like if I were to take this class, let's say we have all 30 of us that are in this class, and I said, okay, 3 weeks into this class, half this class is going to have to leave because they didn't hit a certain benchmark. And then, a few more weeks later, I'm going to take that half of those students and I'm going to say, okay, now another half of that group has to leave because they didn't hit a certain benchmark at that point. And as we get to the end of the semester, then we have to go, okay, now another half. So then we're down to, at the end of the semester, only an eighth of the students that were in the original class are now more prepared, and 7/8 of the students are no longer part of the class, so they're not prepared. But if I were to take that, if I were to sit there and just keep slicing the class down, yeah, I'm going to eventually have a product of a small portion of the students that, statistically speaking, in statistics, are going to be probably doing really, really well with statistics. But what about the other 7/8 of the people? Okay, but that's how they were trying to compare it, and it's not a healthy thing. I mean, there's not a math class out there that I have taught or that we offer that will guarantee that you are going to be this or this or this. And it always bothered me as a teacher. I used to teach down at Chaparral High School, and our calculus teacher used to say, I've got the highest AP test scores in the state. And the person, he actually did have the highest AP test scores in the state. But his AP Calc class started with say 35 students in it, and by the time it came down to taking the AP test, he was down to 10 students. Okay? So 25 of the students would be gone. And it bothered me so much because this guy gloated how well his AP scores were. And it's like, but you lost 25 of your 35 students. You're only testing 10 of them. That's bad. And I would, when I used to teach International Baccalaureate, which is a world curriculum, it always frustrated me if I had a student come to me saying, hey, I'm going to drop your class. I mean, I would meet with that student going, why are you dropping the class? I just don't know if it's what I want to do. It's like, you're 16 years old. How do you know what you really want to do? Why would you take away the opportunity for you to, I didn't care if a kid scored an 8 versus a 1 on the IB exam. I'd expected all my kids to take the IB exam, and I had pretty good scores with my IB exam, only losing 1 or 2 students in my 3 sections. So I had roughly 100 students, and then it dropped down to 99 or 98 students by the time we took the test. And I was criticized for that by other teachers going, oh, you need to wheedle this down so you have good scores. And it was funny, the first year I did it, I had one section it was a calculus class for IB. I started with 30 students, and I ended with 30 students, and my math coordinator at the school I was at in Nevada said, you're going to have some really bad test results. And I'm like, I don't care. He goes, oh, you should care because people are going to look at you as a teacher saying, what are your scores? And if your scores aren't good enough, you're not going to be deemed to be a good IB teacher. Well, my math coordinator at the time, his average score was a 4.5 out of 8. Okay? So a little bit better than half. But he was dropping students like crazy. My first year doing it, I had a 4.7 average out of 8, and I kept almost all my students. And so when he said my scores are going to be lower, I'm like, look at that. I taught all of my students, and I have a higher average than you that taught the same class who dropped a whole bunch of students. And that's just coincidental. Well, the following year, my scores went up even more. I went from 1 section to 3 sections. So I had 98 out of my 100 students that were still in the class from the start of the year to the end of the year. And my scores went up to 4.8 out of 8. But I kept all of my students. So what was happening there is with me as a teacher, and I attribute this because I realized that each and every student that I've ever taught has the opportunity to be successful. And there's a lot of teachers going, oh, this kid doesn't know how to do this mathematically, so I'm going to get rid of him. Well, yeah, if I had a kid that was in my IB class who didn't do real well with adding and subtracting fractions, guess what I would teach that kid how to do? Add and subtract fractions. And then that would rebuild that thing. I mean, I kid you not, it was such a simple thing like that, but there was just so many strange opportunities. But these are just weird things that people do in education to try and make themselves as teachers try and look as, be a better teacher. Okay, so the process of those 5 things: state the null and the alternative, create the hypothesis, making your normal distribution, calculate the p-value, state the conclusion, so fail to reject the null or reject the null, and then check for type 1, type 2, and any red flags. That's all stuff that is kind of in our wheelhouse of we know how to do. So every part of this process should be somewhat familiar to you. Yes, I understand we had 9 days off of spring break, so you didn't lose your knowledge. It's still there. It's just, reinforcing it. So random sampling is the most important thing to look for when you're looking at data. Okay? If you're collecting data, you have to have a valid way that you are random sampling what you're testing. If you're not random sampling it, it's really bad. But unfortunately, we get past that. And it says here, Was the sample collected in such a way that each person in the population had a fair chance to be in the sample? If not, the results of the study may not be generalized to the entire population. So, if I have a random sample of people, let's say each of these accounts for 50 people. So I've did a random sample of 150 people. How did I ensure I really, truly had a random sample? Okay. I told you this earlier this year, that my mind and your mind are broken because I can't randomly sample. I can't come walking into the room saying, hey, I'm going to randomly pick some people. I can't randomly pick people just by thinking about it. Okay. There are characteristics that of you, the population, that I would go towards. There's prejudices, there's bias, there's students that I have more of a conversations with. I might pick Tommy when I walk in because Tommy and I had a conversation this morning about Star Wars. So Tommy is first and foremost on my mind. Sorry about that, Tommy. That you're my number one pick right now for today. So, but I can't do that because there's things that I think about. Now, if I truly wanted to random sample you, I would give each one of you a number, and it doesn't matter what number I give you, but then I would have to basically create a situation that I have all of everyone's number, and everyone's number has the equal likelihood of chance of being picked from something. I already told you that I can't put all your numbers or all your names in a box and shuffle it around and start drawing, because there are influences that take place. I already told you how I cheat on all of our end of the year gift giveaways. Okay, I crumple up my piece of paper and I throw it into the thing. Why is that? Because when someone reaches down, all the pieces of paper are laying flat. Mine is kind of rigidy. So someone's hand's going in there and like, oh, they feel, oh, I pull this piece of paper. Oh, it's a little crinkled. Oh, Chris Sturck just won the biggest prize. I get it every time because I know how to cheat that system. So I can't do randomness with that. How can I really create true randomness with it? And really the main thing that's not going to show any type of bias is somehow using a computer to generate a random number that would then give me a thing. Now, here's the funny thing. Does anybody in here have a TI 84 graphic calculator? Does anyone have one with you? Nobody? It's okay if you don't. It would have been great if you did, because here's the funny thing. Let me pull up my graphing calculator. This is the craziest thing. If you also had a graphing calculator and you did this, you're going to get the same number. Okay? So the graphing calculator has a random number generator on it. So if I go to stat, I got to remember where it's at. Stat, calculate, test. No, where's that? It's not there. It's been so long since I've used this apps. Vars, statistics. Looking for random number generator. No, I'm not going to find it that way. So I'm going to go to the random number generator here. Random integer. Let's see if I can do this right. Oops, clear. Second catalog. And they found this problem on the AP statistics test. So random integer, if I went from 0, to 100, and I wanted to choose 5 numbers, I think this is going to work. Yep. So if you had typed that in on your graphing calculator, okay, my calculator should be different than your calculator because it's two different things. But if you did that exact same iteration right there, the very first string that's going to show up is 95, 91, 14, 51, and 40. Everybody's calculator would show that. Okay? It's not until you do it a second time that it truly comes out to a random situation where it's now different. But there's a certain default on the TI graphing calculator that if you do a random integer, the very first time you do it comes up with the exact same thing. Now, if I went and redid this again, if I cleared out everything on here and I went and did it again, because I've already run the iteration once since the calculator's been on, it's not going to give me the 95, 91, 14, 51, and 40. But if the first time I use it for the day, you turn your calculator on, if you hit the random integer 0 to 100 and you chose 5 of them, it would still give you the same random numbers, which is it's crazy. So then TI started realizing, oops, there's a default in our function. So random sampling is so very, very important. When you are reading something, you have to see the wording random sample, a random sample of, okay? And then once you do a random sample of, you can look for if there's other red flags. If you don't see a random sample in there, it's a misleading situation, or the author who wrote the problem or did the study forgot to put it in there. But if you were to do a data collection and you were to run a report, one of the main things that the person who is grading it is looking for is, did you have random sample that you have in there? Now, the person could lie, say, hey, we did a random sample of 50 people, and they totally lie about their data. That's a different category. But if you don't see random sampling has taken place, that is a huge red flag. But as you go through the rest of the reading, you might look for other red flags where it's like, we're going to just pick people who have brown eyes, and then we're going to check cholesterol levels, and we're just testing people with brown eyes. Well, are we looking why are we looking at people with just brown eyes? We should look at the entire population and do a random sample of the entire population regardless of your eye color to figure out cholesterol levels, so things like that. Independence is a word we haven't used in a while. I think we touched upon it last semester for about 5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. So independence. Are the observations influencing each other in some way? Okay. Was the sample collected in such a way that one result doesn't change the likelihood of another result? Did we sample less than 10% of the population we are studying? Okay. So less than 10%. So would someone do me a favor? On your phone, tell me what the world population is right now. Can you just do a quick Google? 7.88 billion. You're fine. You're fine. And that was as of 2021. Okay. So independence. If I wanted to do a study based on. Oh yeah, well this was as of 2021. Okay, so we got a couple years that we added to that. So yeah, I'm sure it's higher. I'm sure than that. But if we were to say, hey, we want to test 7.88 billion people, or 7.88 billion people as of 2021, did we test less than 10% of that population? I mean, that's an enormous population that you're trying to pick. So independence. Are the observations influencing each other in some way? Okay. Like, did I create something that caught your thought process? Okay. So a real quick, easy way to do it, saying, let's say we're going to have all of Cherry Creek High School in the gym. Okay. Let's say everyone crams in there. I know there's not enough room, but let's just pretend we get everyone in there. Okay. If I say, okay, I have I need you guys to do something for me. But before I do something, I'm going to tell you that you're going to get this brand spanking new top of the line skateboard with the perfect wheels, perfect trucks, the perfect whoever the favorite skater. This is the skateboard we're going to give you. Am I going to talk to the entire population of Cherry Creek High School? No, I'm going to. People who are into skating are like, dude, I'm in. Dude, they're giving away that skateboard. Okay. All right. I need the first person who loads this app and types their name will win the skateboard. Well, I'm going to get the people who love skating. They're going to do it as fast as they can because they want that skateboard. Yeah, you're going to might get a handful of other people that might do it quickly, but other people are like, dude, I don't like skateboarding, which I don't know what's wrong with them. You know what I mean? Right, Tommy? Like you don't like skateboarding, there's something wrong with you. But is there something that has influenced my population in some way? If not, there's independence. Okay? And that's not the truck company. How'd you like that? Did you like that? Skateboarding, trucks. All right. And then you have the word normality. Is the sample size sufficiently large enough for the conditions of the central limit theorem? Mine all fell out. So the normality, did we fall into a sufficient sample size that's large enough for the conditions? Okay. You know, did I, for normality, did these types of things happen? Did I have a sample greater than 30? If I had percentages, did I have these two characteristics take place? Did all of this type of stuff take place? If that took place, that's going to allow the central limit to take place. That's going to allow us to say, hey, this creates a normal distribution. Okay. If these three tests right here don't fit, as well as now this less than 10% of our population is one more thing for independence. So you can't have normality without having independence. You can't have independence without normality. Okay, so they go hand in hand with each other. So they're two very specific tests that work with each other. And so that's what I have for you guys today. I hope that was okay. So would you try, and I'll be checking this off for tomorrow, page 109 and 110. Give me an honest try. Yeah, you're going to goof up on it a little bit, but you know me. Just give me an honest try, get you the points, and then you can just build off of that. Sound like a plan?